that we've been looking at and just bringing that together. So yeah, we've got Lou and Beth here today, so I'm going to present the report, but they might chip in as well, just to sort of say where we're at with some of the strands and the pieces of work. So hello, Beth and Louise.
Hi.
Everyone else pretty much knows everyone. We're all good. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, just to give you some context, what we've done with this report is we have built evidence from a number of sources. So we developed a theory of change for the Walking Ambition. And what we sort of wanted to do was really look at the strands of work in detail. And I'll zoom in a little bit more there. The challenge that we found was physical inactivity is having negative effects on the overall health and well-being of many of Manchester's residents, increasing our healthcare costs. And the goal really for Walking Ambition was to enable the greatest number of people possible to routinely walk for pleasure, personal or environmental benefit and travel convenience. And if you look at the activities and outputs here, we've got Walking Voice, Daily Mile, an influencing strand, Festival of Walking, which is festival and events, website, marketing campaign and digital, and also community investment and workforce walking champions. So we've got, then leading on from that, a number of intermediate outcomes that we're looking for evidence around. So how infrastructure is designed, increased access to Daily Mile resources, people motivated to walk more, etc. Really looking towards our long-term outcomes around health and well-being, social and environment and travel. So sitting alongside the theory of change, we obviously want to align what Walking Ambition are doing with, as you'll be very familiar with, our Enabling Active Lives programme theories. So we're always looking at how these strands of work sit across these and how, you know, involving local people is contributing at each of these steps. So while we are looking at, in a little bit probably more project programme strandy than maybe Local Pilot are used to seeing, we are making sure that we're reading across and that the programme theories are being reflected. So the time frame that we're looking at, Walking Ambition was launched in February 2019, and we are looking to report to the Health and Social Care Partnership this month now to sort of give them an overview of the last 2 years of evaluation. We have been reporting back formally every 6 months. And really the methodology that we've adopted is quite similar to the Local Pilot, so it's reflective learning. We've been observing lots of sessions and steering groups. We've got project monitoring data that we've had. Then we've got impact data, so some survey data, and then obviously third-party data sources, whether that be Active Lives, etc. So that's just a bit of context on where we are. So today what I want to do is just give you a little bit of an overview of what we've found in each of these strands, and then have a bit of a breakout room discussion around 3 topics really, which are, is this what you expected to see? Does this reflect what you thought Walking Ambition was? Secondly, what your locality walking offer has been and which of these strands you've necessarily been taking up. And then thirdly, really important for us, is what next? So after hearing this today, are the things that you're going to do, maybe, you know, is it going to lead to action, new connections, new ways of working? So if I go into festival and events.
Sorry, just to jump in there, just to kind of reinforce as well that, so in terms of the Walking Ambition, we've got another year of the kind of ambition at the moment to kind of deliver, if you like. So kind of really using this to help us shape this kind of next phase of work and kind of look at the opportunities and maybe the ways in which we can embed some of the approaches more within localities. So kind of using this evaluation to really help drive that work over the next year, and then try and help us identify what's needed in terms of resource and investment around walking after 2022 as well. So yeah, just wanted to kind of reinforce that.
Yeah, thanks, that Beth, really useful. So yeah, straight into festival and events. So just to give you a headline really, GM Walking delivered the festival events as their first time in 2019. That was a physical event that took place, and if I click into this, it was the first one that it took over from TFGM really doing this. And so what happened was there was a bit of a lag in time, but really 429 walks or walking activities happened, and there was a brochure that was put out there, and there's lots of events that were contributed into this physical brochure, and there was 275 walks people kept registered, and there were thousands of walkers really recording data within that. The campaign really tried to make it seem like, walking was anything. You could define it as roaming, gambling, mooching, exploring. It was trying to just say it isn't like your traditional rambling activity. So it was really opening it up to however you want to walk, get involved. So that was the first time that GM Walking took that over. We then saw 2020, and what happened there was a real aim to try and make the target audience more inactive walkers, less of the usual people we might tend to see, and open that up. And obviously coronavirus hit, and so this was amended, and it became an online festival. And because of this, it did attract, still hundreds of people, but the numbers were lower. So we had 258 participants, and they were across all of the 10 GM areas. So we had City of Manchester quite high with 48, and Stockport 37. But when we actually look at our target audience, there was only around 24% who had said that they were, low activity level people anyway. So in terms of it attracting our target audience, it wasn't as successful as we maybe would have hoped it to be. But that being said, we also ran a survey of people, and only 14% of those people were actually already members of the Walking Voice, and 79% didn't take part in that 2019 festival. So that's telling us that, we are attracting new audiences and reaching new people out there through these mechanisms. So when we think about what was delivered, it was really aimed at being with your family or on your own. Obviously, it ran across October rather than May. People were, because of lockdown and restrictions, it was more of a virtual offer, and creating an online virtual community. So you could sign up to it, and people could then put their own routes and contribute that way, and log their walks. When we think about the motivations and impact, like I said, we ran a survey of walkers, and we found that really improving mental health and getting outside were the top two sorts of motivational factors. We also found that walkers encouraged others to walk. So we know that figure that we have of 200 or 300 walkers is probably at least double, because most people were out with other people who they were encouraging to walk, but maybe who hadn't actually registered themselves as participants. So they were acting as these sort of hyper-local community champions, encouraging other people to get out. And over half of people that we spoke to really felt that the festival helped them to include walking into their daily routine at least 2 weeks after the festival. So we're seeing some embedding sort of, behaviour change there as a result of being involved in that digital festival. If we click into this, you'll just see it's got the personal challenge there, and wanting to inspire others as the two main motivators, and improve mental well-being, and to achieve a personal challenge, and providing inspiration to get outside. So that's what we found from the digital festival of last year. And if we move on to this year, there's lots being done. So 2021 development, the steering group have been really busy, and that's made up of key partners and community leaders, planning this together, really wanting it to be a co-designed approach, and making sure that the offer and the content of the festival is co-designed by people in communities. So it's not going to be a repeat of the digital festival, but there will definitely be an element of that. So complementary to the existing digital infrastructure that exists. So we've got the website already, we've got the Daily Mail toolkit and things like Go Jauntly that exists. And the focus is going to be Get Out in May. So it's really a call to action just to get people out every day in May walking. And that's what this festival this year is all about. So there's a bit of a gamification approach happening. So we've got bingo cards that are going to happen and calendars. And if I just click on this one, you can see that there's things happening every day, so you can track that online and print these things out. But then also PDFs where if you don't want to do it digitally, you don't have to, and you keep a record that way. So the next step at the moment is to get more audience involvement, more co-creation at local level, and for us to embed some of those evaluation feedback loops so that we've got that motivation and impact data after the festival as well. So linking it back to programme theories, what does this really mean? And it's quite clear that learning and adapting has been one of the key priority areas here. It's been really had to be very responsive approach to every year has been slightly different and how it's evolved. So been pretty much based on reflective practice and understanding key feedback from people we've spoke to, people engaged, key stakeholders, and responding to the environmental challenges that we've got. So there is going to be a focus on quality, inclusivity and targeted participation over this broad mass large participation model that you might see from other sorts of festivals. Okay, so just moving on to the engaging community strand, and the Community Investment Fund really is the key driver here, and the GMCVO actually operated the grant on behalf of Walking Ambition, and in total there were 89 awards distributed and £222,000 across 3 different levels really. So we had 5 very large partnership awards distributed, and then 31 medium awards, and then 53 small awards. So when we look at the data that we have, the distribution does show that nearly 50% of the organisations or people that were awarded the grants were based in the most deprived quintile, with over a third being in the top 10% areas nationally. When we look at the grants across local super output areas, the lower level, then there is more of a spread. So, 7.9% in across the most deprived, the least deprived, most deprived, and 6.5 in the least. So there is more of a spread when we look at this, but the majority were in areas with an inactivity rate above 25%. So when we think about actual boroughs, they were evenly spread, and that's largely to do with a bit more of a targeted approach that happened. Manchester saw a greater amount, and Glossop 6.9% with the least, but not being said that, like we see in distribution across all of the areas. When we look at beneficiaries and who these grants have gone to, or awards, then the most common demographic who were supported by the grantees were those with disabilities or long-term health conditions. And then secondly, we see families, children and young people. So there's a strong link there with the local pilot targeted sort of community profiles that we're seeing. We've also got a strand on adaptation and learning. So, what happened with this was it wanted to be a different way of distributing money to make sure that the money could get to the people that needed it in a simple, really responsive fashion. So, there was a very simple process, and all projects provided some evaluation data, and all of those that fed back so that there was an increase in frequency and length of walks. We also found that increase in confidence as well. Adaptation was important through coronavirus. So we did find 13 of the small grants were actually awarded to almost COVID response adapted projects. And we've got a few examples here of how that happened. So the new ways of working is really important. And 40% of the grantees were not previously known to GMCVO, which is great, because it's opening up the audience to this this fund. And what also they found was useful was a rolling grant mechanism. So rather than having it's launched and you have to wait for the next round and you've missed it, there was a real sort of rolling responsive programme of quick decisions. And this worked really well. And GMCVO have decided to replicate that into other areas. So it was less focused on the more numerical targets that you might find, and it was more focused on targeted coverage. So if there was an area that they found that people weren't just putting their hands up and coming forward to, they could go and do a little bit more targeted, promotion of the grant, so that we could do this. Another thing that was found was that, it wasn't that, no, you're not been successful, go away. It was very much, a supportive process and a bit of capacity building going on with the projects. And a lot of the projects came back after support from GMCVO. And of those that came back, nearly 30% went on to receive more money than they actually originally went for. So it's great in being able to help upskill and develop capacity in the communities. So the programme theory that we see this aligning most with is really involving local people and growing assets. So it's really about reaching people in the hyper-local settings and making sure that the money gets to them in a simple, really sort of targeted fashion. And, they distributed all of the money that they had, and 89 grants have been successfully delivered. Okay. So we then have the Daily Mail. So Greater Sport, GM Moving and Daily Mail really want to see Greater Manchester as the first Daily Mail city region. So that is their ambition. And it's about taking that concept out of the school setting where we're most familiar, used to seeing it, into other workplaces and other community settings. So in response to that, to enable that to happen, there's the Daily Mail Toolkit resource, and that's been developed. There's been a lot of community engagement developed via Collaborate Out Loud, who have led on that piece. And there's been a targeted workplace strand that's been led by Greater Sport. And we've had 500 plus downloads of the toolkit so far. So the toolkit was really co-designed, and Collaborate Out Loud did a real, great piece of consultation. They spoke to 50 plus groups in targeted communities, and all this was done in lockdown and used, really innovative ways, whether it be Google surveys, Twitter chats, Facebook engagement, guided conversations, to make sure that this toolkit was really useful and, fit for purpose for the communities. So we found through that it was important to test the understanding of what a mile was in the first place. So that's important. And they found that the enablers for this were companionship, the environment was important, health and well-being, motivation and time. So these were the enablers to being able to do the Daily Mile. Barriers, on the other hand, were again practical, other responsibilities, health and well-being as a barrier, and then environmental and routes. So the rollout across the workplaces here, we see really there's an opportunity now to think about the lone worker, people working from home, that strand of work. It's about encouraging HR departments to be able to share, but also enable their workforce, employees to actually be active. It's one place to sort of access the resources and support and know where to go. You can register as a Daily Mail supporter, and it's just a great place to be able to set up staff-led workplace opportunities. Then across the community, we've got, lots of other resources out there to enable community users. It's all free to use. There's, lots of gamification there where you can set small personal challenges. There you go. So, you can have the Daily Mail step tracker, etc. So they're the toolkits. And when we, so we're thinking about the programme theory. then really this is about strategic enabling collective leadership. So there is a need for a cultural shift to enable this piece of work to actually be embedded across workplaces and communities. So enabling the employees to really be supportive of doing this, but also a need for really having, you know, local promotion and community champions in that community setting that are going to promote this work. Okay. So we then have the digital campaign. So really we see the website as the key feature here. We've got, you know, dedicated direct purpose there. The website is a central platform. It's for residents, community stakeholders to use, find walking opportunities across the region. But then there's other tools promoted, you know, through that. So whether it's the Go Jauntly or the Love Exploring, and then there's the social media presence. So I'll just quickly that's go into this, but the website, if we look at the traffic, you know, we've got thousands of users and lots of different sessions, but Facebook, Snapchat and Twitter obviously are ways in which that we push people through to the website and vice versa. So we are seeing, you know, other sources such as LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. There as well. So, you know, the website really has the central point for all of these. The apps that are being promoted really, I think, probably Go Jauntly as the free app being promoted by June Walking is the primary one there, but also Wellbeing Walks and links with the Go Jauntly projects across the different localities that have taken that up. So far, we've got 30 plus walks, but then there's the more family, children sort of centred app, the Love Exploring app, as well, that's also promoted. Then if we think about social media, you know, we've got dedicated, you know, paid campaigns there. So the Facebook page, the Snapchat, the YouTube. But then if we're looking at the way in which people actually share this, then there are, you know, impressions there, but people are engaging with it. So we are seeing engagement rates rising after these campaigns. So we've got, if we go through here, you know, you'll probably all be engaging with these, but you've got the dedicated pages here and links back. And if we think about programme theory, again, it's really about involving local people and growing assets, because without this, the content focused on the stories of local people, all of this isn't going to work. So the campaign and gaining traction, communities about the shares, it's all really important that, you know, you've got the key stakeholders promoting this work, but we also need local people to be engaging with it too. Okay, we've now got the Walking Voice. So the Walking Voice is really a varied network of individuals really there to create noise about walking and wanting to promote and influence decision making that promotes walking across the system and in localities. So there is a steering group and there's a number of organisations that sort of sit on that steering group. We've got Living Streets, TFGM, Ramblers, Sustrans, City of Trees, Christie, NHS Foundation Trust, and obviously GM Moving. As of March, we had 463 members, and if we think about the role, it really is to, you know, provide expertise, best practice, local insight, advice, contribute to this conversation and awareness, and really just be there for collective learning. It's a channel for information exchange, but it's also to be the walking advocate. If we think about the growth of the network, Nick Cavell has actually done a really interesting piece of social network analysis, and this image shows the actual Walking Voice network as of 2019, and then this one shows it in the summer of 2020, and you can just see all the different linkages and ways in which the network has grown in number. So it started off with 68, went to 389, now we're at 463. So we've been looking at the depth of the relationships and the frequency with it in which these participants actually communicate and the degree of collaboration, not just the number. So that's an interesting piece of analysis. And think about the programme theory. This is really obviously around effective cross-sector and within sector collaboration. It's really a web of individuals and organisations that are doing this work. And we're seeing that this huge growth demonstrates the impact of the GM Walking team in being able to recruit these new members and grow the network. Okay. And moving on to the campaign. So the Greater Manchester Way is the campaign. So there's a partner toolkit, and there's customizable content for these posters where you can make sure that they're relevant to your area. There's been 7,654 page views in the first 2 weeks of launch, but there's really stories coming through from the communities. Obviously there's the film that's great out there, but there's a separate piece of evaluation being done by DEVA that really, tells a greater story about the depth and the impact of this campaign that we're going to draw on for this final report. And this is really important that we consider strategic enable collective leadership. So the campaign does have support by senior leaders and high profile champions. You've got people like Andy Burnham, Chris Boardman, really supportive of this campaign. And this is filtering through an organisation such as TFGM and obviously GM Moving, really having buy-in for this at the highest level, but then making sure that that speaks to the hyperlocal communities as well, and that sort of creation and sharing of stories works at the local level. Then we have the workforce and champion strand. So this has been really thinking about how we can increase walking opportunities and influence the mindset of the population. It needs sector change to happen. It's about training and promoting walking in the workplaces, but also having key trusted workers such as GPs to promote walking through their direct contact with our target groups. So it's alongside the workforce agenda, but also alongside agendas such as climate change and health. So it sits well across these wider themes. The champions work is about developing the existing champions and upskilling them to work differently within their communities. If we look at the GM system leadership piece, the aim really is to enable transformation in culture, behaviour, skills, knowledge. Again, Collaborate Out Loud did a landscape review and found that there is need to develop a diverse group of community collaborators. So, really to be able to, again, we've said this before, but co-create with the communities and make sure that people can connect together and move together. And the programme theory is really about transforming governance and processes. So the way in which we see this as being important is to really have a culture change, but also being able to make sure that resources such as the toolkit are there and available, and the way in which people work and see their workforces responding to this changes. So the key themes from the landscape review have found that it's important to promote autonomy, provide meaning and strengthen connections across the workforces. So then localities, that's where we are today. All of the localities have used walking to enable their offer and to make sure that they are reaching their target communities. The Go Jauntly project's been used across different areas. Local pilot leads sit on the festival and the Daily Mile steering groups. And there's been resources and training from central team that people have obviously taken up systematically across the areas. Today, and leading on for the next few weeks, we want to really do a bit more of an audit of, what's happening out in the localities. What have you been, if we're thinking about these strands of work, what have you been engaging with? What's your walking offer, and what's happening next in terms of, where you see this work going in your areas? So it'd be nice to just be able to